Movers 3. Day 3 on the job, the haunting of Mrs. Thompson's mansion. Some places are best left untouched. Some stories are meant to linger in the shadows. Welcome to Mrs. Thompson's mansion, where the past whispers secrets and the present holds its breath. Mrs. Thompson sat at her kitchen table, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the wooden surface. She had just finished a cup of chamomile tea when she picked up the phone. Big T? Yes, I need your help. It's urgent. Big T, the owner of the local moving company, leaned back in his chair, a doobie in one hand and a phone in the other. What's the job this time, Mrs. T? He asked, a hint of skepticism in his voice. It's not just any job, Big T. I need Leonard and Leroy to help me clear out the old mansion. It's a bit of a mess, she explained. Big T chuckled. You know those two have a knack for making things more complicated. But sure, I'll send them over. Just a heads up, they'll need to stay until everything is packed. Since the mansion's out in the middle of nowhere, they'll need to bring food. You got anything for them? Absolutely. I've packed a huge bag of food and a cooler with drinks for Leonard and Leroy. I made sure to include Leonard's favorite, chocolate chip cookie dough, Mrs. Thompson replied, her laughter echoing through the phone. Sounds good. I'll let them know. Good luck with the cleanup, Big T said before hanging up. As Leonard and Leroy arrived at Mrs. Thompson's house, they were greeted by the warm smell of fresh-baked cookies wafting through the air. Hey, boys, Mrs. Thompson called out, her eyes twinkling. I've got a feast ready for you. Did someone say feast? Leroy exclaimed, grinning as they stepped inside. Mrs. Thompson pulled out a massive bag filled with sandwiches, fruits, and snacks. And of course, I packed drinks and your favorite, chocolate chip cookie dough. Leonard's eyes widened. You always know how to motivate us, Mrs. T. Just then, Mrs. Johnson entered the room, her face lighting up. Oh, there you two are. I heard you were tackling the old mansion. Are you sure you're ready for it? Ready as we'll ever be, Leonard replied, trying to sound confident. Mrs. Thompson grinned. You know, they say that place has ghosts. Heard some stories about strange noises and flickering lights. Ghosts, Leroy laughed nervously. Maybe we should bring some sage to ward them off. Oh, come now, it's just an old house. A few creaks and groans, that's all, Mrs. Thompson said dismissively, though her smile hinted at her amusement. Still, it's kind of spooky out there, Mrs. Johnson added, sharing a knowing glance with Mrs. Thompson. As they packed the food into their cooler, Leonard said, Why do you always bring up ghosts, Mrs. Thompson? Maybe she's trying to warn us about the mansion, Leroy replied, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. Leonard laughed. Well, if there are ghosts, as long as they don't eat our food, we'll get along just fine. The group shared a hearty laugh, the tension in the air dissipating for a moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Leonard and Leroy arrived at the sprawling mansion. The house loomed before them, its once bright facade now dulled by years of neglect. Ivy crawled up the walls, and the windows glimmered like hollow eyes. Looks like something out of a horror movie, Leroy muttered, clutching a flashlight and peering into the darkness. Come on, it's just an old house. Let's get this done so we can go home, Leonard replied, attempting to sound braver than he felt. They stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind them. Dust motes danced in the beam of their flashlights as they surveyed the cluttered rooms, filled with forgotten furniture and dusty memories. As they crept up the stairs, they thought they could hear faint voices echoing through the halls. Did you hear that? Leroy whispered, eyes darting around nervously. Just your imagination, Leonard replied, though his own heart raced. They noticed the bedroom door ajar and cautiously pushed it open. Inside, they were surprised to find that the bed was unmade, yet there was no dust in sight. It was almost as if someone had just left the room. Something's off, Leroy said, glancing around. This place should be covered in dust, but it's clean, like someone lives here. They stepped into the kitchen next and noticed the same unsettling cleanliness. What's going on? Leroy murmured. a hint of panic creeping into his voice. Suddenly, the door to the room they had entered slammed shut behind them with a loud bang. Leroy jumped, eyes wide. "I want to get out of this house," he exclaimed. Leonard put a reassuring hand on his friend's shoulder. "We have a job to do for Mrs. Thompson, and we're getting it done." He took a deep breath, trying to steady his own nerves. "I'm going to sleep by the front door," Leroy said, backing away. "Good luck, but I'm not sticking around here." "Fine, just don't let the ghosts get you," Leonard called after him, half joking. Leroy headed downstairs, finding a spot by the front door. He lay there, one eye open and the other closed, paying close attention to his surroundings. The night was thick with silence, but he could have sworn he saw the handle to the front door move slightly. His heart raced as he heard another door shut somewhere in the house. "Is someone in our moving truck?" he thought, shivering at the notion. He wasn't about to find out in the dark night, not without backup. Meanwhile, Leonard was exhausted and sleeping through it all. The next morning, Leroy woke up groggily as the sun filtered through the grimy windows. He stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, and was hit with a wave of confusion. "Wait a minute, where's the food?" he muttered, looking around. The fridge door stood ajar, and upon closer inspection, he noticed the unmistakable absence of the chocolate chip cookie dough. "Leonard, get in here," Leroy yelled, alarmed. Leonard appeared, still half asleep. "What's going on? Did a ghost eat it?" he mumbled, scratching his head. "Even better. Our cookie dough is gone," Leroy exclaimed, looking agitated. "And the sandwiches, too." Leonard's eyes widened with disbelief. "Are you serious? I was looking forward to that cookie dough." "Yeah, well, I think someone is messing with us," Leroy replied, glancing nervously out the window. "I swear I saw the front door move last night." "Great. Not only do we have a ghost problem, but now we're being robbed too," Leonard grumbled. "Just what we need. Let's check the rest of the house. Maybe they left us a note saying they're borrowing our food," Leroy joked, trying to lighten the mood. They searched the kitchen and the rest of the house, but there was no sign of any intruders, just the eerie feeling that they weren't alone. In the quiet of the morning, Mrs. Thompson arrived, sipping her Earl Grey tea. "Good morning, boys. Ready to tackle the rest of the mansion?" "Not until we figure out who took the cookie dough," Leonard snapped, frustration evident in his voice. "What do you mean, who took it?" Mrs. Thompson asked, her brow furrowing. "Someone or something is stealing our food," Leroy exclaimed, looking distressed. "Maybe it's the ghosts," Mrs. Thompson suggested with a playful grin, though her eyes hinted at a bit of concern. "Very funny," Leonard replied, rolling his eyes, "but I'd really prefer that the ghosts return our cookie dough." With renewed determination, Leonard and Leroy decided to finish their job despite the unsettling atmosphere. They began packing again, but the unease lingered, making every creak of the floorboards feel like a whisper of warning. As they worked, strange sounds echoed through the halls. Doors creaked open and shut on their own, and shadows danced in the corners of their eyes. The house seemed alive, and it was watching them. "Maybe we should just leave," Leroy suggested nervously, glancing over his shoulder. "No way. We're not letting this place win," Leonard said, his resolve hardening. "We're here for a purpose, and we're finishing it." Just then a loud bang startled them both, causing Leroy to jump and accidentally knock over a huge, ornate painting that had been propped against the wall. The frame shattered as it hit the ground, and they both stared in horror at the wreckage. "Oh no, what did you just do?" Leonard exclaimed, eyes wide with panic. Leroy groaned. "I swear I'm not clumsy. It was the ghost." "Right, the ghost who just wanted to redecorate," Leonard replied sarcastically, trying to hide his frustration. "Do you think it's valuable?" Leroy asked, peering at the broken frame. "Let's hope not. If Mrs. Thompson sees this—" Leonard trailed off, his mind racing. Thankfully, he remembered he had super glue in his backpack. "Hold on, I've got an idea," he said, rushing to retrieve it. With careful hands, he began to repair the frame while Leroy stood nervously, glancing around the room. But as they worked, an unsettling feeling washed over them. The air grew colder, and they could hear faint whispering coming from the corners of the room. "Did you hear that?" Leroy whispered, his voice barely above a tremor. "It's just the wind," Leonard replied, though he wasn't sure himself. Suddenly, the shadows seemed to shift, and the sounds grew louder, as if the house was alive and responding to their presence. Leonard's hands trembled slightly, and he hastened to finish the repairs. "Let's just get this done before whatever is in here decides to make a move," he said, trying to sound brave. As they continued their work, the air grew colder, and they sensed they were not alone. Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching. Leonard and Leroy exchanged nervous glances, their hearts racing. Just as they were about to investigate, a loud bang echoed through the house. The front door slammed shut, and they both jumped, startled. "Okay, this is getting ridiculous," Leroy said, his voice shaking. "I think we should really think about getting out of here." Leonard nodded, but before he could respond, the shadows seemed to shift, and a group of scruffy-looking individuals emerged from the darkness, their clothes tattered and their expressions wild. "What are you doing here?" one of them growled, stepping forward. "We're just here to help Mrs. Thompson move out," Leroy stammered, backing away. The leader of the group, a lanky man with an unkempt beard, shrugged. "Mrs. Thompson doesn't own this place anymore. It's ours now." "Yours? But it's a mansion," Leonard exclaimed, incredulous. "What are you even doing here?" The leader's grin widened, a sinister light in his eyes. "We needed a place to crash. Why should we leave?" Leroy, gathering his courage, piped up, "We're not leaving until we finish our job." The intruders exchanged glances, their amusement fading. "Then maybe it's time we teach you a lesson," the leader said, stepping closer. Without warning, the leader lunged forward, grabbing Leonard and pushing him against the wall. "Tie him up," he barked at the others. "Wait, you don't have to do this," Leroy exclaimed, panic rising in his throat. But it was too late. The intruders quickly bound Leonard's hands with rope, rendering him helpless. Leroy's heart raced, and he felt a mix of fear and anger bubbling inside him. "Let him go," Leroy shouted, trying to sound brave. "You can't do this." "Oh, we can, and we will," the leader sneered. "You're just in the wrong place at the wrong time." Leroy glanced around, desperate for a way to help. He noticed a heavy box nearby, filled with old trinkets. With a surge of adrenaline, he grabbed it and swung it toward the intruders. "Get away from him," Leroy yelled, adrenaline coursing through him. The box hit the ground with a loud thud, scattering its contents and momentarily distracting the intruders. Leonard took the opportunity to wrestle against his bindings, his determination ignited. Determined to scare Leonard and Leroy away, the intruders began making strange noises, banging on walls and flickering lights. The duo, however, stood their ground, refusing to back down. "Is that the best you've got?" Leonard shouted, trying to sound defiant, even as fear clawed at his insides. Leroy, however, looked like he might faint. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, startling everyone. The intruders paused, confused. What was that? "Maybe it's the ghosts," Leroy squeaked, trying to lighten the mood. "Shut up," the leader hissed, but even he looked nervous. As the hours ticked by, the sounds intensified, whispers turned into shouts, and the shadows seemed to loom closer. Leonard and Leroy huddled together, hearts racing, trying to convince themselves it was just their imagination. In that moment, the leader turned to his gang. "Check the rest of the house. Make sure no one else is here." As the intruders scoured the rooms, Leonard and Leroy exchanged a glance, silently plotting their next move. With the leader distracted, they had a brief window to escape. "I have an idea," Leonard whispered, his mind racing. "If we can just get to the front door." Leroy nodded, determination flooding his veins. "On three?" "Three," they both whispered, and with that they lunged toward the door, their hearts pounding in their chests. As dawn broke, the two men were exhausted, but determined to finish the job. They began packing again, the eerie atmosphere of the mansion still hanging thick in the air. Leonard decided to take a break and headed to the bathroom. As he opened the door to come out, he froze. The leader of the intruders stood right there, blocking his way, flanked by the others who had been hiding in the shadows. "What are you doing here?" Leonard managed to stammer. "Get out of my house," the leader growled, eyes narrowing. "But Mrs. Thompson owns this house," Leonard protested, his voice trembling. "Not anymore," the leader shot back, stepping closer, a menacing grin on his face. "You better leave and not say a word." Leonard took a step back, summoning his courage. "This is Mrs. Thompson's house, and we have a job to do." The leader's expression darkened. "Tie him up," he barked at the others, who moved quickly to grab Leonard. Meanwhile, Leroy continued packing and moving things, unaware of the unfolding chaos. He heard a muffled noise that he assumed was Leonard playing another one of his silly pranks. "Hey, Leonard, hurry up in there and knock off the games. I'm tired from all the strange noises throughout the night," he yelled, but there was no response. Realizing something was wrong, Leroy's heart raced. He crept around, looking for signs of his friend. As he turned a corner, he stumbled upon the bathroom door, slightly ajar. Peeking inside, he found Leonard tied to a chair, eyes wide with fear. Standing near him were the strange intruders, their backs to the door, discussing their next move. Leroy quickly ducked back, his mind racing. "Okay, think, Leroy, think. I can't just barge in there. What would a Ghostbuster do?" He glanced around, searching for anything he could use to free Leonard. Spotting a loose roll of packing tape, he grinned. It's time for a stealthy rescue mission. Leroy quietly grabbed the tape and snuck back to the bathroom door, where he could hear the intruders still chatting. "Once they're gone, we can do whatever we want with this place," one of them said, chuckling. "Yeah, no more moving boxes," another chimed in, and they all laughed, unaware of Leroy's presence. With a deep breath, Leroy burst through the door. "Hey, you guys ever heard of personal space? Because you're about to be out of it." The intruders spun around, startled. "What the?" Leroy lunged forward, brandishing the roll of tape like a weapon. "You want to mess with my friend? You'll have to get through me first." "Are you serious?" the leader scoffed, eyeing the tape. "You think that's going to scare us?" "Have you seen what this stuff can do?" Leroy retorted, taking a step closer. "I could wrap you up like a burrito faster than you can say ghost." In the chaos, Leonard managed to wiggle his way free from the chair, using Leroy's distraction to his advantage. "Leroy, now!" The two friends sprang into action, catching the intruders off guard. With a combination of tape and sheer determination, they managed to tie up the leader. "Guess what? You're the one who's tied up now." Leonard laughed, adrenaline coursing through him. With the intruders securely tied, Leonard and Leroy took a moment to catch their breath. They quickly called the police to report the situation. "Who knew a haunted mansion could come with such interesting guests?" Leroy joked as they waited for help. Once the authorities arrived, they were shocked by the duo's tale. "This is quite an adventure you've had," the officer said, shaking his head in disbelief. Back at Mrs. Thompson's house, the two men recounted their wild night. Mrs. Thompson listened, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You mean to tell me there were people living in the mansion?" "Yep, and they tried to scare us away, but we turned the tables," Leroy exclaimed, still buzzing with adrenaline. "Oh, and I dropped a huge painting," Leonard added, a hint of guilt in his voice. "The frame broke, but I managed to fix it with superglue." Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened. "That painting? It was worth $750,000. The frame was only worth $20,000, she exclaimed, a mix of surprise and relief washing over her. "Wait, you didn't like it?" Leonard asked, puzzled. "I hated that painting. Who wants a picture of our dead cat with his legs sprawled open?" she replied, shaking her head with a chuckle. "Tom, my husband, hired some famous painter to make it for my birthday. He said having his legs spread showed how much my little Porky loved and trusted me." Leroy burst out laughing. "That's quite the gift. I guess you really have to love your cat to appreciate that." "Yes, well, Storage was the best place for it, Mrs. Thompson said with a wink, clearly amused by the memory. Just then, Mrs. Johnson, who had been listening patiently, chimed in. "Oh, I have yet another job for you two. My friend Lucille needs a piano moved." "A piano?" Leonard asked, intrigued. "Yes, it's old and large. Her husband loves it but never plays. They're moving to a new spacious place and just want to put it in storage for now until they settle everything with the move," Mrs. Johnson explained. "Thank you. We'd be happy to help," Leonard said eagerly, "and please put in a good word for us with Mr. T." Mrs. Thompson smiled and reached into her pocket, pulling out cash. "You did great. Here's a little something for your hard work." She handed each of them a $1,000 tip. "Wow, thank you," Leroy exclaimed, eyes wide with disbelief. "This is amazing." "Just make sure you keep that cookie dough safe next time," Mrs. Thompson joked, her laughter filling the room. As they packed up the last of the boxes, the adventure became a cherished memory, one filled with laughter, fear, and a few unexpected friends. And somewhere in the depths of that old mansion, the shadows watched, waiting for the next unwitting souls to wander into their realm. As you navigate through life's challenges, remember that sometimes what seems daunting or frightening can lead to unexpected adventures and laughter. Embrace the unknown, for it may just hold the key to unforgettable experiences and new friendships. What ghosts will you confront on your journey today?